the meeting announcement. This meeting is being held in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Law, duly announced, submitted to the newspaper, and advertised more than 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and notice posted in the municipal building and on the borough website. I apologize to all those who were waiting. We had some technical difficulty getting everybody on because we were at a meeting right before this meeting on an emergency basis. We were not planning on it, but it was an emergency dealing with public safety for our residents in Oakland. So with that, project overview by Boswell Engineering, and it's a public hearing on the proposed sanitary sewer system project, decommissioning of the existing sewer treatment plants and the application for financing. So it is going to be conducted by Boswell Engineering with Giselle Diaz and Kevin Boswell and Jonya Kimmick, our engineer. And if there's any questions, John Napolitano. And then David Young, our CFO, will be speaking on the financial part. Yes, you're on.
Thank you, Mayor. My name is Kevin Boswell. I with Giselle Diaz, who heads up our water wastewater division, and Jonya Kimmick, who serves as our municipal representative. We serve the borough and its residents as both the municipal engineer as well as the water and sewer engineer. The purpose of tonight's presentation is due to the fact that the borough is seeking funding from the New Jersey Infrastructure Bank, referred to as the NJI Bank, in order to decommission 3 borough-owned sanitary treatment plants. The sanitary treatment plants will be converted into pump stations, and the effluent will be conveyed to the Northwest Bergen County Utilities Authority in Waldwick. We're back on the first slide, right there, for treatment. The NJIB requires a planning evaluation to be performed. The proposed project meets the criteria for a level 2 environmental review. A project planning document has previously been prepared and submitted in accordance with NJAC 7:22-10.10. The level 2 environmental review, the subject of tonight's presentation, provides the following information. 1, a project identification. 2, proposed project description. 3, an evaluation of alternatives considered for the project area. 4, the environmental consequences of the selected plan. This will include beneficial and adverse direct and indirect impacts to water quality, hydrology, air quality, noise, natural resources, cultural resources, and environmentally critical areas. 5, for wastewater treatment, water supply, stormwater management projects, the population to be served, and wastewater or stormwater flow or water supply demand projections. 6, social and environmental impacts. 7, required mitigating measures. 8, a summary of the coordination with other agencies and the public regarding the proposed project. 9, references to documents used in the preparation of the environmental appraisal. 10, maps of the planning area, service areas, and location of the proposed construction. So tonight, what we're really giving you is an overall summary of the project with specific information relating to the environmental impacts. So next slide, please. So as far as just getting some structure around tonight's presentation, we ask that we try to identify the comments and keep them as brief as possible so as to allow everyone a chance to speak, but naturally that is a fluctuating thing. And as far as minimization of the repetition of comments, again, this is a presentation as specific to the requirements of the NJI Bank relative to the environmental impacts. Please note we are required by the administrative consent order by the state to decommission the plants. the only residents that are currently within the current sewer service area, which I'll describe in a moment, are able to connect to this project. There is an application into the state to expand the sewer service area to other areas in Oakland. This presentation this evening is not part of that application. That is a separate project, or I should say multiple projects in the future. The penalty is not part of the application for financing being submitted to the iBank. There's a discussion of a penalty that's associated with an ACO. Again, tonight's presentation will deal with environmental impacts. Mr. Young, David Young, will also speak to some financial concerns at the end of our presentation. Next slide, please. So the borough owns 3 treatment plants. They started in the mid-1960s, and there was Skyview Highbrook, and then that's off of Lakeside Boulevard. That handles about 15,000 gallons a day on average. There's the Oakwood Knolls sewage treatment plant on East Oak Street. That handles about just under 21,000 gallons on average. And then there's a much smaller plant known as the Chapel Hill sewage treatment plant, or STP, we refer to them as, on Hiawatha at Mountain Lakes Road, and that was built later in 1986. Next slide, please. So in 2017, the borough conducted an investigation on the condition of the 3 sanitary treatment plants and determined that all 3 were in poor condition. They were beyond their useful service life, and they were beginning to fail. The study determined a significant capital expenditure was required to address the deficiencies. There were 3 alternatives that were considered. The first one was to actually, and this was part of an old wastewater management plan that the borough had, was to build a new treatment plant on the Ramapo River. This alternative, although previously considered, was determined to be both technically and economically infeasible. The permitting, the costs, and the recent reclassification of the Ramapo River to a Class 1 waterway effectively precludes this alternative from being considered. So the second 2 alternatives was to replace all 3 plants in kind, and the third was to convey wastewater to a nearby plant for treatment. And the third alternative was determined to be the most cost-effective due to 3 primary reasons. One, the capital cost, although slightly higher, the operational costs were significantly less. 2, the potential for additional costs and uncertainty associated with operating 3 plants. If something from a regulatory perspective changes, and it does frequently, then you are not dealing with upgrading 1 plant, you are dealing with upgrading 3 plants. And the third thing is that in the field of wastewater, it's generally considered that larger is more effective, more efficient. The Northwest Bergen Utilities Authority is a regional utility. It serves 13 other communities. It has the capacity to accommodate this flow with no capital improvements. And this alternative provides far more predictability in terms of being able to gauge what future user fees are. So for 3 primary reasons, the third alternative was identified as the most cost-effective and straightforward going forward. Next slide, please. The decommissioning design, what you see in front of you is in the light purple are what's known as the sewer service areas that are recognized by the DEP. At the bottom of the plan is the Oakwood Knolls area. To the upper left is the smaller Chapel Hill sewer service area, and to the right you see the Skyview Highbrook area. And the plan is to take the Oakwood Knolls system and decommission the plant in its entirety and convert that into a pump station. And then the lime green lines that you see are force mains. So there would be a 3-inch PVC force main that would exit onto Yawpo, up 202 and up Franklin Avenue into the borough of Franklin Lakes to a manhole that is directly in front of Stop and Shop there, and drop into actually a Northwest Bergen Utility Authority interceptor line, which then goes to a NBCUA owned pump station that again relays that wastewater into the township of Mahwah and drops it into a much larger interceptor line that eventually goes back down into Waldwick. Similarly, Chapel Hill would go up Hiawatha over the hill and then down onto Monhegan, and then it would run by gravity in that red lined area down and pick up the Skyview Highbrook area. So in a similar manner to the Oakwood Knolls treatment plant, both the Chapel Hill as well as the Skyview Highbrook sanitary treatment plants would be decommissioned. In addition to the decommissioning of that treatment plant at Skyview Highbrook, there are 2 pump stations that are located. One is on Tuscarora on a cul-de-sac, and one is on Lakeside Boulevard up a small road. They would both be abandoned as well, and a new pump station that would accommodate all of the flow from the Skyview Highbrook sanitary sewer service area and the Chapel Hill sewer service area would be located near Huber Lake. And then again, in a similar manner, a force main would go out to Franklin Avenue, run parallel to the force main coming from Oakwood Knolls, and drop into the same manhole in Franklin Lakes in front of the Stop and Shop. The next slide, please. So tonight's presentation is what is referred to as a level 2 environmental review presentation. So in accordance with NJAC 7:10.5, the project meets the criteria for a level 2 environmental review. Consequently, we must conduct a public hearing and we have to determine whether or not we believe that the project will or will not have a permanent adverse or significant temporary adverse effect on the human environment. That should be on, not of. And the project is expected to have permanent or significant temporary adverse or direct impact to cultural resources, endangered or threatened species, habitats, wetlands, floodplain, farmlands, or other environmentally critical areas. Next slide, please. So the environmental effects on decommissioning, I would just say that as far as we've identified a number of long-term environmental benefits, and we've identified a single negative impact that is being mitigated. So as far as the water quality, there are beneficial impacts on both surface and groundwater quality. We are eliminating 3 outfalls from 3 wastewater plants, and that will be addressed where no partially treated or untreated or fully treated wastewater is discharged into the borough and more regionally into what's referred to as the Ramapo River Basin. In a similar manner, there is a negative impact that has to be mitigated. So by not discharging the water within the borough and within the Ramapo River Basin and sending it over to the Saddle River Basin, it has been determined that we need to mitigate that impact because the water is effectively being diverted from one water basin to another. And we are addressing that through what is known as a minor modification of the borough's water allocation permit. So effectively what we're saying is we will forfeit rights to pump a certain amount of water at least equal to the amount of water that is being pumped from these three sanitary treatment plants over into Waldwick. So the one negative criteria that was identified is being fully mitigated gallon for gallon by that methodology. As far as air quality, I would argue that there is no impact. In fact, there is an improvement in air quality, particularly odors. There are a number of residents next to these treatment plants that have complained about the odors, and the odors stem from not just the treatment plants themselves, but the aged pump stations that operate intermittently and not the way we would design them today. And when they do operate, there's other odors that are introduced by virtue of the discharge manhole where it drops in over by the treatment plants, particularly in the Skyview Highbrook system. Those odor issues would be eliminated. And noise, there is some noise associated with deliveries of chemicals and the hauling of sludge from the three plants. They would be eliminated. Of course, there are some short-term noise impacts associated with the construction. The construction itself would result in a much smaller footprint at all three locations. And as I said earlier, the force mains themselves are 3-inch PVC that are typically cut into the ground with something referred to as a Vermeer wheel, something that would, it's a very low limit of disturbance type of machinery. So they can be put in very effectively. As far as cultural resources, the project is not located within, but is in the vicinity of certain historic and cultural sites. One being the Allen House down by Franklin and 202. As far as environmentally critical areas, similarly, we are in the roadways. We are not going through environmentally sensitive habitat, and through the restrictions of the DEP, we are not sewering other areas. They are specific to the currently sewered areas as part of this project. Next slide, please. So there are a number of agencies involved. I count 10. And of course, the NJI Bank, we just talked about providing financing. NJDEP, Water Quality Management Planning, they are the entity that issues a treatment works approval. It's referred to as a TWA. I'm very happy to report that was issued last week. So the project has received the primary approval from water quality for this project. The Division of Water Supply and Geoscience and Water Allocation, that deals with our minor modification that I talked about earlier, and that is pending. Water Resource Management Coordination, again, that's a regional planning agency, and that also ties in with what we were talking about with the TWA. Of course, the Highlands Council has issued what is referred to as a consistency determination on this project. So they effectively have signed on to the project. Northwest Bergen County Utilities Authority, as I stated earlier, they have treatment capacity at the plant. They are a willing partner of the borough to accept and treat the flow. There is a connection fee to be paid when that flow gets there, but they are a willing partner to accept and treat the flow. NJDOT, the reason why they are involved is when we cross under the I-287 underpass at 202, they are involved. County of Bergen is involved with a road opening permit for 202 and Franklin Avenues. And of course, the NYS&W Railroad will be involved when we have a perpendicular crossing of the railroad over at West Oakland Avenue. So there are multiple agencies that we are coordinating with, and we have submitted the applications to the DOT, NYS&W Railroad, water allocation. Again, as I stated earlier, we've already secured a CD, consistency determination, from the Highlands Council, and a major permit, the TWA permit, was just secured within the past week. So with that, I would like to turn over the presentation to your CFO, David Young, to talk about some of the financial matters associated with this project. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. Within the I-Bank specifically, we're getting our financing from the New Jersey Environmental Infrastructure Trust. What we are currently looking for is a $5.7 million loan. Loan payment terms are over 30 years. 50% of that loan will come at a 0% interest rate. 50% will come at market rate. Makes a very, very desirable loan to be able to get. The final amount is to be determined. This is what we're applying for. The project could have under. We could, not spend as much as we're applying for. There potentially could be overruns, so we built in contingencies in 2 places for that. The interest rate we're not, absolutely certain on yet. We'll see when we actually get to the financing point. But this is roughly what we're forecasting it'll be. This debt payment is included in the annual fees that we'll be talking about. So there is no added assessment, nothing additional to what the sewer utility users are paying for annually. How it breaks out, that 5.7 million paid over 30, if we get the current interest rate, market rate of about 2.25%, there would be $1 million in interest charges that would be accumulated and paid over that time period. Next slide, please. For the sewer utility, this is how it's going to affect the financials. What we're forecasting is about a $26 to $28 per year increase over the next 4 or 5 years. Again, it's very conservative. It's about a 1.5% rate. There's some variables involved here. We don't know what the interest rate is. Some locations have been getting a little bit lower than a 2.25. So we hopefully have some upside there. Again, the final cost of the project, there are contingencies we hopefully don't have to pay for. We've estimated a very high flow to NBCUA. If that's less, our payment to them will be smaller. And post-transition, we'll have operating expenses. Again, we'll be conservative on what they are in the forecast, but we think there may be some upside, especially over the short term, as we replace current pump stations and treatment plants with fewer items that are using less repair and utility work. So those are high-level financials. We've gone through most of those in detail at previous public meetings. Michael, I'll turn it back to you.
So, Mayor, at this part of the presentation, this concludes the formal presentation. So, Mayor, subject to your approval, if you would like to open this up for questions, we're happy to address it.
Yes, and please please keep your questions limited to 3 minutes because there are a lot of people present. Also, if a question has been asked, please don't repeat the question. If you are so anxious and you want to repeat it, you can email anybody on the council and we will get the answers to you from our engineer and our CFO. But please address your question either to our engineer or to our CFO, because they're the professionals on this. We have our attorneys, also an engineer, John Napolitano. He's here. You could ask him a question, but they're the ones who have the accurate answers. So if you're going to ask a question, please address it to our engineer, John Napolitano, and our attorney, CFO, David Young, even John Yakimic, our borough engineer. And so Michael, you're on.
Just,
okay, welcome.
Mayor, sorry, could the council ask some questions before we open to the public?
The council?
Yeah.
Oh, you're allowed to. Of course, you're allowed to ask a question.
Okay,
But who are you going to ask it to?
Mr. Young. So I know we got a AAA rating. Is that going to, could that affect the bond, the interest rate that we're going to receive, or?
No, it doesn't. And when we go out to the general market, that will affect our interest rate. But this money we're securing from the Environmental Infrastructure Trust, they've already, told us what the rate's going to be. It's going to be a market rate at 50% and 0% for the other 50.
Okay.
Overall, it'd be like 1.25%.
All right. Thank you. That was it.
Anybody else on the council before we open to the public? Okay, Michael, you're on.
Okay, welcome to tonight's public hearing. If you have a question or a public comment, please click the raise your hand icon or on your mobile device or phone, *9, and you will be unmuted and recognized. Please remember to state your name and address. Thank you. Mayor, first up, resident Frank DePentima.
Hi.
Hello, Frank DePentima, 6 Mountain Lakes Road. I think my question might be for Kevin Boswell, but I'll leave it open to his interpretation. So Kevin, what I call the main trunk line, and I'm sorry, that's probably a bad term, the line that would run down Franklin Avenue or up Franklin, depending on how you're looking at it, that ultimately connects into the Franklin Lakes connection up by Stop and Shop?
Yes.
Okay. Who pays for that line? Is that paid for by Oakland Project, or is that paid for by the NBCUA?
It's being paid for as part of this project with the financing of this project. NBCUA is not paying for that.
Oh, somehow I went on mute. So doesn't that deviate from how Franklin Lakes project was? Because I thought NBCUA paid for their main line, and then the people who connected to it would pay for those connections, the connecting lines.
In the borough of Franklin Lakes, the NBCUA constructed an interceptor line on Franklin Avenue, and a pump station and a force main. And there are discussions to do that to sewer part of the downtown area of the borough in the future. That is not what we're talking about here. In fact, this involves no investment initially by NBCUA.
My second question is, and maybe this is for David, the CFO, in the $5.7 million project costs that you showed on the slide, are there any costs within that $5.7 million that relate to what I'm going to say is part 2 or phase 2, the eventual downtown sewering, versus what's going on right now with just the 3 STPs?
No, there are not. The only costs in the project are those specific to the construction, administration, financing of this particular connection.
Okay. And then my last question is, does it still hold that the only approval we have right now is for the connection of the 230 some odd of us that are part of the 3 STPs, that there's no opportunity to have people who are along the Franklin Ave line, let's say, connect to that same pipe that's going to be laid. This project is only covering the 230 plus of us.
Maybe Frank, I can take a shot at that. Giselle, can we go back to the slide that shows the decommissioning design? Okay, right there. Okay, so Frank, all of the green lines are force mains.
Okay.
You can't connect to a force main. It's under pressure. So the only gravity lines are those lines that are indicated in red. So theoretically, there are some homes that could technically connect, but permit-wise with the DEP, they are not permitted to connect. And actually, that was the requirement because they are outside. You see that light purple area?
Yeah.
That is the sewer service area. And any property outside of that area currently does not have sewer service. So the answer is technically you could, if DEP were to permit you to connect those 40 homes or so along the red portion, a red line. But other than that, no, you could not connect.
Okay, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mayor, next up, we actually have a comment that was provided to us via the Borough Clerk, via the state public meeting guidelines. So I will now ask the Borough Clerk to read the statement.
This is from David Sandler, 24 Academy Circle. I realize a lot of work has gone into finding a solution under pressure, and I thank the borough officials for their efforts. It's clear the project does need to move forward expeditiously. It's frustrating to us that our questions have not been addressed, and that leads to further misunderstandings. There are multiple issues, but in the end, it comes down to fair sharing of costs, as well as consideration of costs in the future. Some portion of the costs may, upon reflection, be better attributed to the town as a whole. We're not looking for a free ride, but we have possibly paid more than our fair share for quite some time. Hopefully these equity issues will come into play. Thank you. Thanks, Michael.
Okay, Mayor, next up, resident Katrine Beck.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Name and
Hi,
address.
good evening. Yeah, of course, 8 Chapel Hill. I'm perplexed how Mr. Boswell has reported that there's no adverse public comment in this report when there is more than 121 people on this call. In September, there was more than 100. In the last 2 calls, there were more than 60. The sewer users have emailed, called, texted our opposition and our concerns. So I guess the first comment is, Mr. Boswell, how is it that you're reporting that there is no adverse public reaction to this proposal? That seems contrary to what's happening in our town.
Ms. Beck, I never made that statement. I said there's no adverse environmental impact.
Okay, I think your statement says as to the public that there's no public comment or adverse reaction from the public. And so just so we're clear, there's a lot of concern as to lack of transparency, and there's a lot of inconsistencies in videos and emails as to what's been out there in reports and what's been reported. Just now, there was inconsistency as to 40 people can actually tie in down the line, or in the past couple of meetings, you know, you adamantly have been saying no one, not one person can tie in. So you can understand the frustration we all feel.
Ms. Beck, I don't know what report you're referring to or what notice you're referring to, but at no point in time am I aware that we ever made, there was no adverse commentary on this project. And I did say this evening again, that while technically feasible, it is not permitted for a single user to tie in. I don't understand how that's inconsistent in any way, shape, or form.
There's a sanitary sewer report that's on the borough's website, and in there it says that there is no public adverse reaction to what's happening. It's the first page of the planning document. But
Sanitary, so what is the date of that report?
I think it's, I'm sorry, I think it's to, that refers only to the environmental, that doesn't refer to the whole project. That refers to only the environmental impact. So it's not in terms of money, it's just in terms of the environmental impact. I think that's what
is this part of the level 2
correct,
study?
Which is only about the environmental impact.
Okay,
right.
So I have that here. I'm happy to review it if you'd like. But
well, I don't want to burn up my 3 minutes. I do want to say that it's in there, and I'll be happy to screenshot it and email it to you. I read it, that said something about the fact that there is no public involvement or reaction with respect to this. And I just want the record to be clear that there is. Moving on, it seems to me we have this ACO hanging on our head now, and we have to go with this expedited plan, but yet we're making decisions without having major decisions in place. We don't have an approved wastewater management plan. It seems like we're waiting for DEP to come back with that. We have no drafted sewer ordinance. It's like selling a condo to someone and saying, here, come pay $6 million for this beautiful condo. Don't worry about the offering plan. Don't worry about the bylaws and rules and regulations. We'll figure that out later. There's no drafted sewer ordinance that I see here. So I don't know what we're operating with. There's been a refusal to disclose the NBCUA agreement that we're paying for. We Oprah'd it because we asked for it, we didn't get it. We were told to Oprah, we did it. And then there was an objection to that. I don't see how that can't be disclosed to us. In the documentation that goes back to 2011 and certainly since 2017, this issue has been studied and restudied, and we've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for it. Back then, the project was supposed to be $4 million. It's now $6 million. Why the delay? And why are we paying another $2 million in expenses here? So it seems to me that while I understand you have an ACO that you're trying to comply with, there's a lot of moving parts that have not been solidified. There's a lot of issues that we don't know about yet, and yet you're perfectly okay with taxing 235 families to pay for this. And it's clear now with the group that has been looking at all the documentations that there is future plans. Mr. Boswell, you asked for 1,900 EDUs, if my calculation's correct, in the wastewater management application. We're 235. My understanding is we need 1 EDU per house. Why are we asking for 2,000 EDUs if there's no other grander scale in this project?
I can only respond to the last comment, and
Please.
that the last comment is this project is not a future sewering project of a large portion of the downtown. This is to decommission the plants. It is a separate project.
I understand, but then if that's true, why are we asking for 2,000 EDU capacity if we only need to accommodate 235 people?
Because there is a request in, as I'm sure you know, for a wastewater management plan for future projects for other parts of town. This is a decommissioning of 3 failed sewer plants that need a solution. And this cannot, to have this, you would have a choice of rebuilding the plants in place at considerable cost and considerable high operating expense until such time as when and if the other project ever got off the ground, it doesn't work. So why
I get
the
that.
logic, the logic,
I mean,
technically it doesn't work.
That ship has sailed. I understand we're doing the decommissioning. What I don't understand is, by your own statement right now, there is a grander plan down the road. And I think it appears this infrastructure may benefit that. So why don't we get some town subsidy for something that we're paying for to lay in the first instance? I think that's what this group is frustrated with. We're not asking for a free ride. We're asking for transparency. We're asking for due diligence, that these things I just listed be done so we can study them and know what we're doing. And we're asking that there won't be any redundancy, that if there is a phase 2 and a phase 3 and a phase 10, that we won't be taxed with that. I welcome more users. The more users we have, the better. There's only 235 of us sharing in this cost. The problem here is there is only 235. I wish there was 4,000. I wouldn't be joining the Zoom call. But what we're asking the mayor and council, and to this day, we have not gotten any engagement or commitment by anybody to say that they're looking out to make sure that there is a way, if there's another benefit other than the 235, that'll be subsidized in some way. I'm sure Mr. Young can figure out a way in the budget that's going to be voted in January or proposed to somehow spread this pain out, since it's going to benefit other people. I really would love somebody to sit down with us and engage in that discussion so we can figure this out. We're not against the project. We're against the way that it's being done, and we're against the way that you're not engaging or even speaking to us. It's a public hearing, and we should have these answers, and not for you to just, you know, post something in the newspaper 48 hours before so you can check a box. I understand you're working hard. We are too. We all want the same thing. I know, Mayor, I'll email you.
Ask a question.
Mike, who's next?
Okay, Mayor, next up, resident Chris Bermudez.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So who negotiated the deal with Northwest?
Your address.
Oh, Chris Bermudez, 28 Cayuga Avenue. Who negotiated the deal that Northwest Bergen was going to run the line to the center of town and run it to Franklin Lakes when we're paying for the line? Why couldn't that be negotiated? Who negotiated with Northwest Bergen on the part of 235 residents?
Kevin?
I'm not sure what you mean, Mr. Bermudez. We're talking about.
So Northwest Bergen provided the main line to Franklin Lakes, and you're saying they're going to run the line to the center of town. But now you're telling us that 235 residents have to pay for our line to be ran.
Northwest Bergen put in infrastructure in Franklin Lakes that benefits both Franklin Lakes and the users of your system as well. And in the future would likely benefit many other residents in Oakland if the wastewater management plan is approved by DEP and future projects happen. But the investment made by Northwest Bergen is a benefit to you. They did make the investment, and it isn't unique to Franklin Lakes. It frankly is more of a benefit to the residents of Oakland than it is to Franklin Lakes.
Okay, but that line by Stop and Shop was already there, correct? That wasn't just put in.
It was put there by Northwest Bergen primarily to look at not just what Franklin Lakes could bring in flow, but also to capture Oakland. It is a point that didn't exist before, that we wouldn't be having this conversation today, that we are decommissioning the plants and sending the flow to Northwest unless that pump station existed. We would be having the conversation that you have to pay for 3 new plants.
Okay, but so my question is, which hasn't been answered, is Northwest Bergen is agreeing to pay to run a line to the center of town for the downtown businesses?
No, they're not.
They're not.
But that's what you said in your presentation.
No,
or before. It was definitely said that they're going to run.
Please let me answer you, because I'm not trying to trick anybody with anything that I'm saying. Okay, there is a discussion if there is a future project where jointly the Borough of Oakland and Northwest Bergen would collaboratively invest in infrastructure in the borough. Okay, the details of that have not occurred. They don't exist because there's no right to have the discussion on the detail. The wastewater management plan has not been approved. There's nobody withholding any information from you. The only viable plan that exists is to either rebuild the plants in place or decommission them and do this plan. Those are your choices. There is no choice 3 to have Northwest put something in downtown. They cannot do it. The approvals are lacking to do that. And so I don't know how much clearer I can be.
Okay, my last question, and I'll move on. So when this downtown gets sewers, who's going to be paying for that? Is just the downtown and the residents that are going to be hooking up to those sewers, or is it going to be taxed to everybody throughout the town?
It would be something that the users, typically the policy of the town dictates that it would be the users of the system would finance the construction.
But so, there's no user, so how's it going to be financed?
So at the moment, there is no plan determination as to how we would bring on additional sewer service areas. If we get permission to expand, the town would then have to determine how they were going to do that. Generally, there is a connection fee that you charge to new users that are coming on to pay for new infrastructure. But none of that has even been beyond a casual conversation, because you can't have any definitive conversations until the DEP gives us permission to expand the sewer service area. Until that happens, everything else it's out there waiting.
It's all septic. That's the only thing it can be right now.
So I have one last statement. So this was an easy vote for the town because they're not paying for anything. And it's just, we're going to dump this bill on 235 people. And there's been no transparency. So, I mean, this has been difficult. That's it. I'll move on. Have a nice night.
Oh.
Mayor, next up, I have resident Mary Ann F.
Hello.
Hi, Mary Ann.
Getting a new septic. And I heard that maybe we're going to sewer, so I don't want to get a new septic if we're going to sewer. So tell me what's going on.
Well, right now, the purpose of the hearing here is to talk about a project to send the flow for existing users to a regional sewage treatment plant and decommission the 3 existing small package plants that we have. As Kevin got into earlier in the presentation, we do not have approvals yet to expand the sewer service areas in town to include any residential areas or the downtown area. So as of right now, the short answer to your question is no. Sewers would not be coming to your house, certainly not in the near future where it would affect the decision to have to replace your septic.
Near future, like 5 years?
That kind of depends on the schedule of the DEP at this point.
Okay, because it costs a lot of money to get a new septic system.
Yes, it does.
Septic system if I'm going to have to get sewer.
Understood. I wish we had more clarity for you at this point.
All right, have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, I have resident Sharon Manelli.
Hello, can you hear us?
Yes.
Hi, this is
you have to give your name and address.
This is Ryan and Sharon Manelli, 14 Geronimo Way. First time caller, long time listener. Just a quick question. I missed the meeting, so if you guys covered this already, just stop me. It was more so about the relining of the pipes that run through our yards. I'm one of the lucky town folks who have an easement in the back of my property. And I was just wondering how invasive that's going to be, when it's going to happen, just what's up with that. Because I know, I'd love to do some stuff in my backyard, but if your guys are going to come in with an excavator and dig it up, I'm not going to do anything.
So that's not a topic of this hearing. That's a separate project. If you call me in the office tomorrow, I can give you the background and the details on what we know about when that project is happening.
So that the sewer line here is not part of the sewer line that we're talking in this meeting about.
The sewer is, but the lining project is separate. So the lining that you're talking about is a separate project to the decommissioning.
So that would be an additional cost on top of everything else that we're paying for now.
That is correct.
Sweet. Thank you.
Next up, I have resident James DeMoro.
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we need your address.
Jay DeMauro, 35 Massasoit Trail. How are you tonight?
Good.
I have a couple comments and questions. In both the project planning document and the wastewater management plan, there's quite a bit of detail about the failure of the STPs and also of, I guess, many of the septic systems in the town. There's a lot of documentation about contamination to the groundwater and I guess water that gets essentially into the aquifers that lead to our drinking water. So my first comment is, I think it's hard to differentiate that the 235 people that are on the sewers are the sole beneficiaries of the work that's proposed to be done by decommissioning the STPs, because it affects the municipal's water overall. So that's something I'd like somebody to comment on. And also, just a quick comment too on something David Young just said about a casual conversation about adding sewers into town. I think that's kind of misleading. The wastewater management plan that was submitted, that was written in 2018 is pretty comprehensive, and it replaces the most recent wastewater management plan that was approved for Oakland before. That was in 1990. And it basically talks about the necessity to sewer the town and talks about all the different things between Highlands and everything else that were involved in getting that designed. So I think it's a bit more than a casual conversation. It really seems like it's the plan of the town. It has been the plan of the town, and is just pending approval. So I guess if somebody could talk to the fact that whatever's going on with the groundwater, how it, you know, it's not like we're getting our own water for 235 people coming in once the groundwater is contaminated. That sounds like it's a municipal issue.
Well, I can speak to that, Mr. DeMauro. I can tell you that the borough's wells are in full compliance with the NJDEP, the New Jersey standard drinking water standards. So while theoretically your argument is valid, that not completely treated wastewater being discharged to surface and groundwater does not have the potential to impact drinking water at the current time and for the foreseeable future, and for all of our history of the operating the borough's wells, that has not happened.
That's sort of not what the language of the wastewater management plan suggests, though. I mean, it sort of predicates the necessity of doing the work upon the risk of the water being contaminated. It talks about how the 3 STPs are in failure. It talks about how 90% of the septic systems that were tested are not in compliance with the new regulations. So I don't think that holds.
Well, as far as the treatment plants go, you're exactly right. And as far as 90% of the septic systems, they are not in compliance with the current standards that are in place today. It is not to say they are failing. And in fact, that was the subject of months of discussions with the DEP when we were down there, is that they were advocating for years that we just go back and replace every septic as their solution. And certain towns are in that boat where that is their only solution. And I know Councilman Bialy is sitting there and was sitting next to many borough representatives for years having these exact conversations. Is a wastewater management plan being done in large part due to a water quality initiative? Yes. Is it something that we believe is the right thing as a matter of water quality? Yes. But until such time as the DEP approves it, we're on septic. That's just a fact.
Well, yeah, I agree with you that I think it is a good plan. I've said on several of these meetings that I don't think a town like Oakland should be in the business of managing wastewater. But I think there's a larger picture here. Everything about all the documents that we've been reviewing, which were all prepared by Boswell, talk about the municipality as a whole and how these issues are town-wide. And it's just hard for me to separate out how the first line of defense of getting these things changed and corrected are solely our responsibility when it's not, we're not the sole beneficiaries of the work that's going to be done. And I guess my last question is, why would we proceed with a project this size without having the wastewater management plan approved? What happens if they don't approve it?
This project does not require the wastewater management plan to be approved.
And why is that?
Because the only areas being decommissioned are existing sewer service areas. The wastewater management plan objective is to increase the sewer service area, and it will never service all of the town. It would service a portion of, it's a very amorphous shape that generally serves the downtown area. And again, coming back to your earlier point, the infrastructure that is being placed into service as part of decommissioning these plants is not something that would be piggybacked onto by future sewer users, with very, very small exceptions. I'm not going to say it can happen, but I'm saying it benefits a very small number of people if it became permittable. And by that, I mean 40 or 50 people. I mean, that's it. This isn't going to benefit hundreds of future users. This is very specific. And I pointed it out earlier, it's only those homes that are directly in front of where that gravity line is.
That was my point. My point was about the groundwater contamination of water coming in. I'm not in disagreement with what you're talking about as far as the numbers of houses that could tie into the infrastructure. I'm talking about the benefit that the town will yield from the correction to the system that's now contaminating the groundwater. I mean, you'd have to agree that we won't be the sole beneficiaries of not having contaminants in the groundwater. That would be the benefit.
No, I'm not arguing that point at all, but there are other requirements. If the wastewater management plan is approved, there are significant other requirements associated with making that happen. And I talked about earlier the minor modification of the water allocation permit. If the wastewater management is approved, it requires a far more comprehensive and costly solution to mitigating the interbasin transfer. So I hear what you're saying as far as regionally improving water quality, and you're not wrong, but until the wastewater management plan is approved, these are the only sewer service areas in town.
Understood.
Okay, next up, resident Sarah Michelle.
Hey everyone.
Hi, we need your address.
Sarah Michelle, 23 Cayuga Avenue. My first question is regarding this meeting today. In the past, like the September 30th meeting, sewer meeting, we received a notice basically to let us know that we would have the meeting. Why didn't that happen this time? I believe a lot of my friends and neighbors had no idea about this unless they received an email about it. Can we speak on that?
Yeah, sure.
Excuse me, what about all the letters I signed, Richard?
Right. So we sent notification out one of two ways. If we had your email address from the previous meeting in September, we sent notification via email. If we didn't have that, we sent use the regular postal service to send you a written letter about the meeting. So everybody was sent notification. Specifically, all sewer customers were sent notification about the meeting in addition to the general notice requirements that we were required to fulfill.
Okay. I was just told otherwise. I know those on the email distribution did receive it. Others had no idea about it. Regarding the sewer chair, I just wanted to confirm, is Councilman Bialy still our sewer chair? Because I sent a couple of emails and I don't receive responses. And at one of your council meetings, you took time just to point out who are the sewer liaisons. I mean, sorry, each liaison for each committee chair. I'm just curious if he still is. I know the Levy resigned in August and then Bialy took over, was my assumption. Am I wrong in my assumption?
Yes, I am currently the chairman of this Water and Sewer Committee.
Okay, great. I would appreciate a response when I send emails. My last question has to do with page, let's see, 44 of that planning document that Katrine Beck referenced. Maybe Boswell or Ms. Diaz can answer my question. I'm sorry, it's not page 43. It's, yes, page 44. It says the identity of the owner or operator of the proposed facilities, which are the new pump stations, would be the Borough of Oakland. Now, when we're talking about operations thereof, we have a history of not maintaining the current sewer treatment plants properly and bringing us to the situation we are now where we have to decommission them. And I understand that there are other factors and other variables as to why we're at this point. My question is, at what point are we leaving it to someone else so that we don't have a problem with the operation thereof, like we did with the last, you know, several years with the DPW employee that we can't talk about? Thank you.
So there's going to be no treatment plants now. So what we're talking about is that the borough will own the pumping stations, the proposed pumping stations. Who the operator will have to be a licensed operator, and that will be, I guess, at the discretion of the mayor and council. But it will have to be an operator licensed by the state of New Jersey.
Right, but that's a different license than a treatment operator.
Correct.
Okay, next up is resident Michael Kozak.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, and Steve and David.
We need your address, Michael.
24 Cayuga, Oakland, New Jersey.
Thank you.
I think there's some misunderstanding, and maybe Steve can explain. The line that's going to run from the current treatment centers or from the downtown back to Stop and Shop, they are force mains that will continue to that spot, and BCUA is not involved in any part of that. Is that correct?
It's not the BCUA, it's the Northwest Bergen.
I'm sorry, Northwest Bergen. I get the letters.
All right, I'll leave it up to Kevin and Giselle.
Could you repeat the question, please, Michael?
I'll rephrase the question. There is no pipe that Northwest Bergen is running from Stop and Shop towards Oakland. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So the force mains that are running, folks, are being done just for what we need.
Yes.
If my understanding is correct, the DEP is not allowing any larger size pipe to be put in, that somewhere down the road at the beginning of the force mains, meaning up towards Cayuga section or to the downtown, that additional volume could go through those pipes. Is that correct?
Yeah, in an earlier presentation, I commented that that's an excellent comment, that you can't put in an oversized pipe because you have to have minimum and maximum velocities in the line. Because otherwise the wastewater turns septic, it separates, bad things happen. And that is not to say that Northwest, if the wastewater management plan gets approved, they wouldn't consider putting in a pipe joint trench, but we are putting in 3-inch lines. And the borough and Northwest is not investing any infrastructure at this time in the project, and we do not expect that they will, frankly.
Right, for this project, right? So now,
or any future project, or any future project.
Well, they've not committed to.
They have not committed to put any infrastructure in. That's correct.
Right.
The overall plan if this was Northwest's plan,
right,
is that right before you get to Commerce Street, everything starts to flow downhill. And if Northwest had their wishes, there would be a gravity line that would run down Commerce Street and through a low spot directly into the back of the Stop and Shop right to their pump station. That would cost more money for you users to finance. So what we've done is we've taken a far less costly alternative of just running the force main in the roadway. It's significantly more expensive to run a gravity line down Commerce Street.
Okay, so really, I mean, the borough's hands are tied until the DEP approves the wastewater management plan as far as any additional capacity or even adding on to this project, period.
That's exactly correct.
So if anybody in the audience has any connections, please use them. That's a bad word. You can't use the word connections. If anybody has any influence, we don't want to hear how, but that's where we're standing. Okay. Several permits are still needed to be received. What's your experience on whether they would be met in a timeline? And how does that affect whatever we've signed off on the DEP with the fine situation?
The one that's
maybe John can take that.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Well, hi. Well, typically, if we're being held up on permits, I can get a time extension from the DEP for the consent order because that's clearly out of our hands. In fact, we've requested one already because the department determined this to be a level 2, and when we talked to the department initially, they didn't think it was. So the time framing for funding was given a lot less. It's expanded, so we've requested additional time on receiving all the permits because of the I-Bank's requirements. Kevin, as to which permits you are still waiting for, I guess you can go over
that. The one that we really are, we have a COVID situation where a lot of people at DEP are working remotely. We have DOT where a lot of people are working remotely. So I have to put a qualifier in there that creates issues in what used to be a standard 90-day permit can drag out much longer. But I don't believe that the DOT approval or virtually all of the other approvals, with the exception of the water allocation permit, causes us any concern. The water allocation permit is a different entity within the DEP that typically does not operate before COVID on a 90-day turnaround. So that's the one that I can't give you a straight answer on.
Okay.
All the other ones, I'm pretty confident.
I think, yeah, the concern that I was hearing from some people was that would we be having additional costs or potentially fines if we couldn't get everything, and what in your opinion, what you've seen happen in others. But as long as you guys are comfortable and gals that that's where we're at, that's fine with me as far as my question. Regarding Northwest Bergen, what is the hookup fee to connect to they're charging us a fee to connect at Stop and Shop?
Yes, it's a per gallon fee based on your average daily flow. And Giselle, maybe you have that number handy?
I do not, but I can get it.
Okay, and well, I'm actually, while you're looking at that, let me ask the next question. My understanding is that once we get the approval from DEP, and at some point we start to do a phase 2, Northwest Bergen would then take over and manage this?
No, no. What I could tell you that what the Township of Wyckoff does and what the Borough of Franklin Lakes does is they do contract with Northwest Bergen to do a shared service agreement whereby Northwest provides certain operational parts and they use their licensed operator, and then the borough would conduct routine maintenance, daily inspections, but the licensed operator would be Northwest. There's other operators that the borough could opt to use too. Rob DeBlock has done a fabulous job of interim operating these plants. He could also do that and partner with the borough as well. So as far as operating the pump stations, it's a much simpler task. There's no testing, no reporting. It's very different.
Yeah, no, I guess I said my question wrong. Once we go to phase 2, if and when we go to phase 2, Northwest Bergen would be doing what they did in Franklin Lakes, and this would all be repeated for them to lay and do what they did in Franklin Lakes. Would that be a fair statement?
The borough would look to Northwest Bergen to own, operate, and maintain a regional sewer system.
Okay,
Yes.
That's what was my question.
I'm sorry for not answering.
No, I don't think I said it exactly right. I'm sorry. So my question is going to be just consideration. If there's a hookup fee, when they figure that out, if somewhere down the road, Northwest takes over and says, hey, there's no hookup fee, that is something that's a commonality. And when we talk about we're not the sole beneficiary, mayor and council consider that in the sewer, and when they're looking at sewer fees and things of that nature. So that's on that. Question on the grants, if I could, to David Young. David, what grants are available for sewer type projects like this? I didn't see anything in there. And I guess my second and third question were what grants were we able to get and what grants were not eligible because of any part of the uniqueness of this project?
So the borough's research grants, there's been none that we've been able to obtain. The previous round of grants were from the New Jersey Infrastructure Trust. So the grants that people have talked about that Franklin Lakes got was loan forgiveness from the loan that they took out with the iBank. So we're going to the iBank. They're currently not offering any plans or any givebacks at the moment. That could change depending upon their funding. I believe there was another grant in Western New Jersey, but you had to be a rural population in order to apply to it. So no, this is not being funded through any grants or outside funding, just the finance.
And if I can, I think David hit on a significant point. A lot of these grants are targeted for certain types of communities, either being federal or at the state level if they advance statewide priorities. Like if we had lead service lines, there would be lots of free money to remove lead service lines like they're doing in Newark. That's where the iBank is focusing a lot of its grant efforts right now, okay? But we do look for grants. We have looked for grants. We are able here to take advantage at least of the iBank and their low cost financing, which will help somewhat. But we have not come across grants that would, actually pay for, the principal cost of the project itself, unfortunately.
And while it's not common for people to give you grants after you started a project, there are times where you can get grants after the fact. We could apply those grants to pay down the financing and reduce the user's cost for debt service. So there won't be something that we'll stop. We'll continue to look for and apply for any grants that we come across that could be attributed to this project. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Super. Final question, I believe, unless I see something else here. Sole beneficiaries. I know that term has come up several times in this conversation. Rich, can you just allude to what you would foresee in the sewer department as to addressing anything down the road that we weren't a sole beneficiary of? So for example, if 42 people were able to hook in, or you found out that a gravity feed line could be tied into a 3-inch line that's existing, how would you see the borough handling that in order to give peace of mind to the current users?
Right. So I think, as I had alluded to you before, Michael, there's a couple of different approaches here. You can do a connection fee. You can do a special assessment. Towns look at it different ways. And that is something that the governing body would need to kind of settle on what they thought the best approach would be. I think John Napolitano may have some additional insight into this given his line of work. But the fundamental idea there is if somebody connects, they're going to pay their fair share of the capital cost of that system. All right. Same way Northwest is requiring a connection fee for this project, which, by the way, is part of the financing and goes, I think, to the previous question asked by one of the residents about how did the project go from 4 million to 6 million? Well, you know, part of that in the intervening 3 years was finding out what those connection fees, and the amounts escaping me now, $800-something thousand.
820.
820. Okay. That now gets wrapped into the project cost. Okay. So there is a formula type calculation that gets done, and perhaps John can kind of get into that. It gets a little bit into the weeds, that says, okay, new user X, here's your fair share of the project. And that's what we base the assessment fee or the connection fee on. All right. So John, I don't know if you want to supplement that at all.
Well, I mean, I guess the big difference between the assessment and the connection fee, a connection fee is based on previous costs allocated within the system already. An assessment is more of a projection. The project's going to cost me $1 million. I've got 1,000 new users. We issue a special assessment payable over X amount of years to each home that hooks in. A connection fee typically is already, you look at invested capital already into the system. That invested capital is then figured out on a per person basis. Any new person who joins has to basically make up for the capital costs that were already invested. Now, depending on when and if in time you are able to expand your system, you would have to do an evaluation at that time, which was the most cost-effective way to stabilize your rates within your community and to be fair among the residents who are hooking in and the ones who are already hooked in. So it's really a mesh. It's, at some point, it's about timing, right? If it's 10 years from now, the answer may be different than tomorrow.
Right.
So those are really your two sections.
I think this I'm sorry.
So,
I think this.
I'm sorry. I was asked to everybody to try to keep comments and questions to 3 minutes. We do have a lot of speakers left. We're already over about an hour and 20 minutes into the meeting. So just a reminder to everybody there, please.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, resident Allison Whalen.
Oops. Hello, hold on 1 second. Sorry, just starting my video.
We need your address.
Yes, I know. Allison Whalen, 36 Tuscarora Drive. I would like to know who paid for the wastewater management plan and the sewer feasibility study. Being that these were both town-wide studies, were they paid for the town either partially or entirely? We're still waiting on an official response to our Oprah request on this information. Thank you.
Richard?
The WIMP was primarily paid for via the current fund. And the sewer feasibility study, I'm trying to remember. David, do you recall?
No, that was pre-me.
Okay. All right. Sewer feasibility. All right. I'm going to have to get back to you on that.
Okay, thank you. Oh, my dog says thank you too.
You are unmuted.
Michael?
Oh, okay, next up I have a resident on a mobile phone. You may speak.
Yes, Martin Ruback, 45 Academy Circle. I hope I'm being heard.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Question about this connection fee. In July, a resolution was passed authorizing $802,417.56 as a connection fee. So being that there's no construction being done by the Northwest Sewer Authority, what does that entail? Just the privilege of connecting? How long has Franklin Lakes been in operation?
We're not talking about Franklin Lakes.
Yes, I know, but that's been in operation for so many years, and previously it was stated that because they thought somewhere down the line we may hook up. So is that why we're paying that $802,000? What are we getting for that?
Okay. What that is this is John Napolitano, by the way. Under the MUA statute, which Northwest Bergen is created under, they allow for what's called a connection fee. What that connection fee is that all the capital money that has been used over the years to build their system, that includes the treatment plant, the interceptors, that all the residents in that system have already paid for, that would be the proportionate share for a new group to hook in. So you would take, and every year they do a new calculation. Their auditor does it. They look at all the debt service paid, all capital improvements, less grants. That gets added together, divided by the amount of users, and they come up with a price per new user, EDU. So every new EDU that joins their system, in order to put them on the same footing as capital as the people who have already been in the system, you have to, that's basically what you have to pay to join the system. So you are on the same footings as the people who funded that system to construct it in the first place.
Okay, thank you. I just have one more question for Mr. Young. Last week there was a Zoom meeting where we discussed a bond ordinance of $5.5 million over 40 years. So are there now two financing projects? This 5.7 million, 30 years, and the bond ordinance that was at last week's Zoom meeting?
So the infrastructure that we're looking at right now with the iBank is the loan we're looking to get. The bond ordinance is what the mayor and council gives us to authorize the financing. So that's 5.5 million. Already had 300,000 authorized as part of this project to do the design engineering. That's how you get to the 5.8. The bond ordinance says 40 years because that's the useful life based on however the state allows you to define useful life for a sewer project. So that's what we're allowed to put into the project.
So what is the total financing that we're looking for? Is it 5.5 and 5.7, or which would be 11 something? Or
we're looking for 5.72 million in financing.
Period.
All right, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, next up, Resident Mark Albala.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, you have to give your address, please.
Okay, Mark Albala, 34 Academy Circle. I don't know how to ask this one, but you know, this has been a topic that's come up in Oakland numerous times. I'm a resident for 30 some odd years. I can think of at least 5 or 6 times that this topic has come up. The closest I think came was when Franklin Lakes did their sewer authority. And it's even mentioned in the thing that Oakland just couldn't get off the ground, which is why Oakland wasn't connected at that time. What assurances do we have that this is going to actually not be another example of what we've done 5, 6 times already?
Are you talking about the town, or are you talking about you?
Us. That this doesn't go when it gets studied.
The 3 plants? Are you talking about the 3 plants or the townwide? Possibly.
Well, right now the 3 plants. The town one is another one, but you know, we've done these things numerous times and they've stalled many times.
We've never gone before to Northwest for the 3 plants.
When Franklin Lakes did theirs through Northwest, it is actually documented that it didn't happen in Oakland because Oakland couldn't make a decision. It's in the documentation.
What exactly does it say?
It says we would have extended to Oakland, but they could not make a decision.
About the 3 treatment plants, Kevin?
About that? No, I believe you're referring, Mr. Abala, to the WIMP, the overall.
That's
area.
correct. Well, at that point, it was trying to extend to the entire town. That was what, about 18 years ago?
Yes, and then in response to your earlier question about what about this time? What's different this time? Well,
that is correct.
We received a permit last week from DEP
But I thought
for the project.
We've received permits before in the past also, haven't we?
No.
Not that I know of.
No.
No, we received a treatment works approval from DEP for the decommissioning project last week.
Okay. And when
nothing to do with the town.
I understand it doesn't, but the end result is the same.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. It's not.
All right.
So okay, go on. I'm sorry. I don't agree, but that's okay.
All right. Well, that's good that we agree that we disagree. All right, Michael.
Okay, next up, resident Vivian Steinmetz.
Hi, 74 West Sheffield Street. I'm a little confused on a couple of things, and so bear with me. One is, and I know we've just had a number of conversations about I understand this project is specifically for these 3 decommissioning, I get that. But there's also a lot of discussion about future plans that could come into play. If there were connection fees for new people coming on to this system or whatever, what would we as people who have been in the system and paying an fairly expensive, large sum of money, ever see any of that come back to us to reimburse us, if you will, for their now use of whatever has already been put into place? I don't understand how that works.
But you already heard Kevin Boswell say the line would never carry it. It's specifically designed for the amounts of effluent going out of Oakland. And it's just, it's a wish.
But then again, I'm hearing, but even, I mean, we're 235 people. If another 40 homes can hook into that line, that's another 40 homes. It makes it 275
but they can't hook
families.
it, as you heard.
Well,
Kevin, explain this.
But there could be, okay. I mean, you know, we're getting conflicting, I think, at least that's what I'm hearing, conflicting information about what can be done either with this or even going further with the downtown area, maybe being able to hook some in, maybe not. I know it's not part of this project. I got it. But at this point, I can tell you, I've been here since the end of 1986. I calculated it out. I've spent almost $40,000 on sewer fees in that time frame, as I'm sure everybody else who's been here that long has equally spent that amount of money. And so we're being asked to put a lot of money in to something that I feel like we're doing this piecemeal instead of, we've been pushed into a corner because of the penalties and the rules, et cetera. When we were looking at something, should have been looking at something over the years, and I guess we have, but we haven't acted on them, to look at a really full-blown plan that really—
So what is your question?
Well, it's more of a statement at this point, I guess. But I really feel like we've been pushed into a corner now to have to do a piecemeal project instead of looking at the whole picture. And I understand that there's permits you need and all of that, but I'm not seeing where the town has gone forward over the course of the last 10 years or 20 years to address a town-wide issue. And now it's falling on the backs of 235 people.
The town-wide issue has nothing to do with the 3 plants.
Sure it does, because
no, it doesn't.
Sure, we've got sewer users and we've got septic tank users. We've got problems with the septic tanks. We've got problems with the sewers. It's a town-wide issue.
All right, well, we thank you.
And again, I'm fully in favor of hooking into Waldwick plant. I have no problem with doing that. And I don't think we should be in the sewer business, but I think we should have addressed this on a really town-wide basis. The other thing, my question is, and we've talked about a little bit, is about the penalties and that being added on to us when the town was responsible for managing those.
The penalties are not being, excuse me, the penalties are not being discussed tonight. That's a separate issue. This has nothing to do with those penalties.
Fine.
And that will be discussed at a different time.
Okay, I'll stand down on that. My husband also has a question.
Yes, this would, I guess, be directed to Mr. Boswell.
Yes, sir.
I understand that I think you made the statement that the effluent now that goes into the Round Pole River from the 3 STPs now goes to Waldwick. And
It's the Ramapo River Basin, actually, but yeah.
Okay, okay. But I believe I heard you say we now have to use our well water to make up that difference and send it to the Ramapo River. Is that correct?
No, you were giving up allocation, essentially pumping rights to pump a certain amount of water out of the ground to mitigate that transfer of water from one river basin to another river basin. It's planning. It's a planning measure. It's not reality. You don't currently use it.
Right. We're not going to deplete our aquifer?
No, you have capacity in excess of what you need.
Okay, Michael.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
We cannot hear you.
Can you hear us now?
We can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, it's Gary Teedens and Karen Lanza, 101 East Oak Street, Unit B8. I was just wondering, what is the life expectancy of each pump station before we have to replace them again? Can you give us an idea?
Well, the pumps themselves and the controls have a service life of 20 to 25 years. But the infrastructure of the wet well, the buildings, the conduit, the force mains, they're much, much longer. So the pumps themselves, they're probably $20,000-$30,000 to repair every 20 years. I mean, that's the order of magnitude that we're talking about. We're not talking about millions anymore. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay, thank you.
And I just have a quick question as to ownership and maintenance of the pumping stations. Who will that be? That won't be the town anymore, correct?
It will
be the town.
That will be the town.
Yeah.
It will be the town.
Yes.
I thought you had said earlier that it would be handed off to another company.
The operation, the operational requirements may be outsourced to a private company under contract to the borough, but the borough will retain ownership of that infrastructure.
But it won't be a DPW person per se that will be maintaining it, will it?
That is to be determined at this point. It could be a private firm, it could be NBCUA, it could be somebody within the borough, depending on what the staffing level is in the department. That's an evaluation that's going to be taking place so that we'll be ready to go with that on day one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
Michael.
Next up, President Rachel Gregory.
To Kiowa Terrace. Let's get that out of the way, right?
You beat me to it.
Yes, that was my goal. So the current user, the current fund that's paying for the wastewater management plan, what is the current fund?
That is the main borough budget.
The general budget.
Yes.
So why, when I look at the budget from the sewer utility users, do I find charges for the wastewater management plan?
Because I think that there was an amendment process that we went through that may have been charged off there. As I'd indicated to the rest of the residents, a little fuzzy on this right at this moment. So we will go back and kind of reconstruct.
We'll get you that. It's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars that we were charged.
Yeah, Rachel, we'll get you that information from David Young. This way you'll get that.
But this is a public hearing, Mayor, and I want the public to know that according to the documentation I looked at, 5% of the population, which is the 235 users, paid for quite a significant amount of both the sewer feasibility study and the wastewater management plan. And I'd like to say that I have a problem with that because we're only 5% of the population, and both of these studies encompass everybody in the town. And on that note, do you think Mayor or John Bialy that the town bears some responsibility to us that we have this wastewater management plan and the sewer feasibility study, both of which showed that the STPs were failing and they weren't in good condition for many years. And it was only until we were fined through this ATO that we now are forced to take action, which means we're backed into a corner and we have to do this project piecemeal. And it's ultimately our burden to bear because, you know, a wastewater management plan, the way it's written, it's beautiful, it's lovely, it encompasses the whole town. And in any other situation, it would have been handled differently. Do you feel the town bears some responsibility for the way it's being handled now?
I can't comment right now because of what's going on, but David, you'll get us the information on this?
I would like to know now. It's a public hearing. And
I don't have the information.
Nobody
don't have the information. David is the only one that has it right now.
If I can just comment, Rachel, the two items that you're talking about are not related to the infrastructure grant application or the financing application that we're doing, nor are they related to the environmental impact that we're talking about this evening. So both of those items, while very critical to the overall sewer utility and the transparency and the sharing of information, not something that we were prepared to discuss tonight. I have that information, but I will get it back to you.
So would we be applying for this loan and this grant, as you call it, if we had not been in this situation? Why would we be here tonight had it not been in this situation? So
yes,
isn't it
we would.
related?
As Mr. Boswell said previously, in 2017 is when they started looking and identifying that decommissioning was the right approach to take. That was before any sewer fines were levied or any penalties from the DEP. It was while we still had our previous operator working. So this process of decommissioning was happening before the fines. It is not a result of the fines.
Well, I read documentation that went back to 2011 that shows that the town was aware that the plants were failing. I mean, you know the lifespan of a plant. It's not, you know, rocket science here. You knew the life and you chose not to act on it. And I believe that's the town's responsibility. Can anybody comment on that?
Yeah, I'll continue to comment on that. The town was acting. They've gone through a change in engineering firm since 2011. Originally, the concept possibly was to replace the sewer treatment plants. And then Boswell came in with the alternative to start investigating, getting the flow to NJ, Northwest Bergen County. To do that required permission from the NJ DEP and a variety of other folks. That takes time. So did it happen as soon as we would like? Absolutely not. But it is something that was being considered and changed along the way.
I just want to urge everyone on here in the public to read the documentation. I think it's very weak in terms of supporting, you know, the alternative analysis is very weak, which shows that this is the best route to go. So I don't believe that that has been established properly.
Are you saying
I'm moving on now. John Bialy, as the chair of the sewer committee, I would like to know why we were told, us, the sewer residents, that we could not participate in sewer committee meetings when in the Consumer Confidence Report published in March of 2020, it says on page 1 that if a resident would like to participate in one of the committee meetings, all they need to do is to write to the sewer and water chair and we'll be able to participate. Why were we told we can't participate? John Bialy.
I was not, I never said you guys couldn't participate. There was a request made for participation, but the commission meets as a sole body and it just doesn't have the availability to include townspersons. But we did consider having a representative from each one of the treatment plants as an informational conduit to the rest of the residents.
Like I said, why does it say in the Consumer Confidence Report that residents are welcome to attend?
Ms. Gregory, are you referring to a water consumer confidence report?
You're talking about our water committee meetings.
Water and sewer committee meetings, it said on page 1 of the Consumer Confidence Report that residents could attend those meetings.
Which documents are you referring to?
I was specifically told that I cannot attend those meetings because there's no quorum or some such thing.
Rachel, which document are you referring to?
Consumer confidence.
Is that the water report?
From March, yes, about the water.
It's the drinking water report.
Yeah, that's a completely
totally
different
report.
subject. That's a drinking water report that is filed
in front of you, because it says the Water and Sewer Committee meets once a month and that residents who would like to participate.
But the term,
this does have to do with water and drinking water, because our sewers do affect the water. We were talking about that before with Jay DeMoro, so I wouldn't say it's an entirely different issue, would you?
a consumer confidence report is a statutory requirement that is issued by the water purveyor. It deals with the water utility, has nothing to do with a sewer utility. It references a water and sewer committee that reviews it, but the water utility is not what we're talking about here tonight at all. Consumer confidence report, it's like talking
sewer committee meetings.
But it's
you should edit your report, and Mayor Schwager signed the letter attached to that report. So if you're saying that was not correctly stated in the report, you should go back to it and correct it.
The consumer confidence report that is issued for Oakland is almost identical to the CCR issued for every other water purveyor.
So you're saying that it was just a requirement of the state to add that residents could attend the meeting, and it wasn't really what is going to happen?
I can give you the statutory requirements of what is in that report. I'll be happy to do that, and what is specific to the borough of Oakland.
Well,
I'm just telling you it's a different animal.
Can move on.
Okay, well, I was actually asking Mr. Bialy, and I also wanted to ask you, Mr. Bialy, what is your role in all this? Because I know as the residents on the sewers, we're very concerned that we haven't heard from you, and you're the committee chair, and we'd like to hear, what you think about this today.
Well, Rachel, we were advised by council, and I was answering all the emails I was receiving until we were advised by council not to, until we were...
No argument. No.
That is
I was answering emails until we were advised by council not to continue answering the emails on the funding of the project because there was litigation in tow. So that's why I stopped answering.
I will resend for the public. I want it to be publicly known that I sent many emails that were not responded to, most especially not by you, Mr. Bialy. Ever did I receive a response from you, and it was sent to the mayor and all the committee members. I just want that to be stated so everybody knows
clear.
that.
But you understand that I've only been the SOAR chairman for the last 2.5 months.
I absolutely know, and I haven't heard you say a thing about this. So I'm very interested to know, as our representative that we elected, what your position is on this.
Yeah, and I do everything I can to mitigate the cost for everyone. And I am concerned about everyone's concerns with the cost that is involved. Everyone is leaving out the fact as if all the people who are on private sewers have no cost whatsoever. I can tell you, I just heard a resident say she's paid over $40,000 in the last 36 years. Well, I'm here 38 years, and I've paid around $40,000 for my septic because I had to replace it, and I pay for a pumping fee every 4 years. So our costs are legitimately in the same location as you guys. I paid $32,000 in one shot to have mine replaced. So I'm just laying the cards on the table. It's not like the people who have private septic systems are getting away scot-free here. We have our own concerns and we have our own bills to pay as well.
Okay, so thank you for sharing. I'm glad to hear from you. About the septics, this is obviously not a hearing about septics, but
absolutely not. And I didn't want to bring that up, but it's a white elephant in the room that no one ever talks about.
So in the wastewater management plan, it says by ordinance of the town, people on septic are going to be required to connect to the sewers when they come to Oakland, And you told Marianne, somebody told Marianne before that there was no plans for that. And I want to tell Marianne and anybody else on here on septic to read the wastewater management plan. And you keep saying time and again, not you specifically, John, but people have been saying that if the wastewater management plan is approved, the wastewater management plan, if everyone reads it, when it gets approved, I want to make sure that we have a voice in what goes forward, because if it gets approved in 3 months, I feel like it might change this conversation.
Absolutely, Rachel,
and I want to be assured that we will be able to talk about it, because right now the if that keeps getting thrown out there is like telling us we don't need to talk about it. But there are people now that want to talk about it because it's our money and we're upset that we have to pay our money. So the ifs are really frustrating.
What would you, Rachel, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Rachel,
yes.
Do you want to build your own plans? Is that what you're saying?
Mayor, there could be, I'm going to answer you. You want to hear my answer?
Absolutely.
I want to be a part, since I'm paying the bills, and so are the 234 homes, in looking at the alternatives and looking at what can happen with this project and being part of the solution. Because you know what? We're paying the bills, Mayor, okay? And we 5%, doesn't matter who we voted for, we are not a majority, so our voices are not being heard. That is our concern. So whether it's the alternative analysis, it's this process we're in now, we have no voice and we have major problems with that. So let me move on. You're talking about the—
Well, I think you already, unfortunately, Rachel, beyond the time frame, and there's still people waiting to ask questions.
Okay, I will pass my questions on.
Thank you.
Could my husband come back and ask the remainder of my questions?
I'm sure he could. Who's next,
okay,
Michael?
So I'll raise my hand again. Thank you.
Mayor, it's Chris Giordano.
Oh, okay. Go up to Michael.
We switched. He was having audio issues.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Chris Giordano, 19 Academy Circle in Oakland. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your time this evening. I actually did want to jump back on one of Rachel's topics. So just please someone correct me if I'm wrong. So we paid for the documents that she mentioned through our taxes, through the general fund. And then we also paid a second time through our quarterly sewer payments. So we paid double for these documents to be created that Rachel
Chris,
Gregory
I'm going to
just
stop
mentioned.
you and I'm going to check that out because that doesn't sound right.
My
I
question
will check that out. I will check that out and I will personally write to you with an answer.
Okay, I would appreciate that. So, Mr. Bialy, if I can just kind of jump to you, and I just have to say that yes, this is the white elephant in the room, what you brought up, but unfortunately, the way that you said it and what you said is the exact reason why you need someone who has sewers in this town to meet with you, to talk to you when you guys meet about anything regarding the sewer system. You know, and you mentioned that you want to mitigate costs. The best way for you to mitigate costs for us, if you care that deeply, as you mentioned, you can reduce our bill by $1,787 or so by waiving away the fine and the interest associated with it, right?
We're not, remember, Chris, that's an issue that's not being discussed tonight. And I assure you, that is a major issue that will be discussed during the budget and it will be discussed by the entire council. And don't worry, that's all I'm going to say.
Chris, I'm going to back the mayor up on that. We've had conversation about it, and we will be discussing that issue on a separate platform.
Has nothing to do with your decommissioning.
Can I?
And we.
Do you mind if I? Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's probably important that we get back to focusing on the intent of the public hearing. The intent of the public hearing is to discuss the environmental impact of the decommissioning. It is not to discuss the impact of who's paying for the fines. It's not to discuss the future expansion of the—
You're absolutely right, David. And so any questions not dealing with tonight's issue, we will write down and we will get back to you.
Well, the unfortunate part is that there's a gray area here, David. So in the presentation, $5.7 million project does include the fines that we're talking about. So
it does not.
We're not talking about the fines. It's not an issue here tonight. I told you that's a separate issue. It has nothing to do with this.
The 5.7 million does not include the fines.
Mayor Schwager, the louder you say it doesn't get the point across to me anymore.
I'm telling you, it has nothing to do with the decommissioning of the 3 plants. The fines are separate. It's a separate issue, will be addressed separately. It has nothing to do with this tonight.
So unfortunately, I keep bringing this up, and so do other people who are on sewers, because there's a huge element of mistrust because of miscommunication that's happened since last spring. And when you say, trust me, there will be a meeting, we heard that same exact line since February. And we had to claw at the opportunity to have meetings like this. So unless I hear a date and a time, I'm going to continue on public record to ask my questions. I don't trust. I'm sorry.
Chris, once we were threatened with litigation, our hands and our tongues were tied. So if your group is telling us, as soon as those words litigation came out, our attorney told us we had to stop talking about all of these issues. And that's why we no longer responded. And that is why we had to be very careful on what we're saying. And that is why you're not getting the full stories of what you think you're missing out, because the word litigation was told to us. Not just me, not just Councilman Bialy, but a group of us. So, and the attorney himself. So that's the problem we have.
So you were threatened with litigation?
Yes.
A threat?
It's not a threat. We were told you're going to litigate.
Those were your words.
We have to be careful.
Anyway, I will ask my questions, and hopefully someone could answer.
I told you I will email back to you.
I have more than one question, like other people on this call, Mayor Schwager.
We have a lot of people waiting.
It's not my fault you let them go over.
Well,
Mayor
we tried
Schwager.
not to. I told Mr. Coons, is our administrator, he was supposed to stop it at 3 minutes.
So, Mr. Bialy, when the block visits the STPs and does an inspection, or when the NJDEP does an inspection, who's the first person who receives those reports?
So this is not what this meeting's about.
Yeah, what does that have to? That's operations.
Stay on topic.
Other people have asked similar questions about the
And
process.
Mr. is now telling you that we really went off topic and we should not have. But that is a separate issue, and again, it involves the L word. So go ahead. Next question.
Okay, so when will this meeting be where I could have these questions answered and we can discuss the fines?
It will be discussed at the budget meetings.
Which we will be invited to?
Absolutely, they're open to everybody.
And that's the time to talk about it. We don't get any sort of pre-discussion to hear about what you want to say, to weigh in as sewer residents, which has been our
The budgets will be the budgets will be open information, the public documents.
Okay.
Yes, Michael. Oh, Kathy.
Okay. Rekadev.
Who?
Rekadev. That's what it says.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Rika just said.
We need your address.
This is Khan Devnani. I am her husband. Calling from 87 West Sheffield Street. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay. Very good evening to you, ladies and gentlemen. They've been very interesting. Overall, my feeling is that, a lot of big technical jargon words are used to distract people, but I have a very different question. We are here since 1980, over 40 years now. Same place, 87 West Sheffield Street. When we bought the house, everybody, the 235 families when it came in, we were not specifically told that when you buy in Oakland, there's a separate issue of sewer, and that's not a sewer issue. This is the price of the house. This is Oakland. It's a beautiful town. We love the town. We love everybody else there. In fact, Mr. Schwager's son, and my son, they were in school together. Beautiful town. So now we paid our taxes and whatever to the town. The government came in, the feds came in, the state came in, the town benefited. And then I hear there were 3 times, efforts made to run the sewer system, we got all failed. So everybody's pushing the question to somebody else. Now, if the town raised the money, we paid our taxes, and even now our kids are grown and they are out of Oakland. We still pay the school taxes, everything else, like everybody in town. So why is this for 235 families to bear the burden of the newer sewer line?
They should have taken care of it.
Everybody hung up or nobody wants to answer?
No, it's not the topic of tonight. That's a separate issue.
I understand that, but again, when will this be the topic? I'm not what was there. The topic is, we had to pay, but why do only 235 residences have to pay?
I say what I want to say.
It's a town who's responsible.
Because
the town
you
should do
are
it for everybody else.
You were on the septic system. I'm on the septic system. You're on the sewer system. You were getting the sewer. The 3 sewage treatment plants. The sewage treatment plant that you were on has to be fixed. It has to be fixed. You're the only one getting the benefit of that.
Okay, then doesn't the town get any money from the sewer system?
I'm sorry.
Doesn't the town run it?
No.
The town owns it?
The town does not get any money from the sewer system. It is a self-liquidating utility. The revenues that come in offset the expenses. Any excess revenues go into a capital improvement fund or a fund balance, which are then put back into the sewer utility.
Very good. I had all that. I didn't understand a bit of it, what you are saying. But then again, somebody has to be responsible. You know what? You're just throwing the question away. Like, oh, this is here, this is here. Please, like in a layman's term, say like this, the town gets the taxes and the money for the year, for 40 years we have paid. And we enjoy the town the same, same schooling system. We paid, we paid our school taxes, everything like everybody else in Oakland. So you should distinguish when people come in town, this is 40 years ago, you know what? You're buying a sewer system. You're going to be held responsible because we are not responsible to run it.
If I can, to move this along, because I don't know about you guys, but I know my iPad is failing. Zoom really sucks down the power here. I think we've heard a general theme from a lot of residents here about the funding. And, we understand that is a main issue. I think we've heard enough on that. We talked about repeating comments. We have a few more speakers. I think we'd all like to get through them.
Only if it's
an opportunity. So, again, if you have a comment about the funding and how it should be shared, amongst all of the taxpayers in town, we understand that that's an issue. I don't think that needs to be reiterated anymore at the hearing tonight. So with that, I think we can move on to the next speaker. Kathy?
Yes, Clinton Gregory.
Hi, Council. Can you hear me?
Yeah. We need your address.
Yes, Clint Gregory, 2 Kiowa Terrace. Hi.
We assume you're Rachel from Rachel.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
As long as it's not the same repeated question. Because we had asked everybody to please be considerate of everybody and ask new questions.
Yeah, the current sewer treatment plants, there's a rent cost associated with that. When going forward for the new replacement locations, is there going to be rent costs put into the
Kevin?
monthlies?
I don't understand what you mean by rent costs.
There's a rent fees.
Yeah, there's an annual fee that is charged to the sewer users.
Yes. Yeah, a user fee. Yes.
There will continue to be an annual fee charged to the sewer utility users. That fee will include operations. It will include debt, and it does today. It includes the debt we have today and the operations we have today. The amount of operations will decrease. The amount of debt will increase. The average user fee will stay roughly the same.
And the cost of operation, that's going to go
down. It's much cheaper to operate 3 pump stations than it is to operate 3 sewer treatment plants and 4 pump stations.
But that is to be determined as to who that operator is going to be and how that's going to be structured.
That's correct. The borough will own the operations maintenance of the collection system, and that will always be there.
That it?
Similar question, no, a different question. Back in September, the loan amount was roughly set at about 5 million, and now it's set and now stated at 5.7 million. Is that expected to go up in the next couple of months before it's finalized?
If there are if there are additional changes to the application, there could be. The NJDEP could come back and say they want us to make a change to the construction design. The user fees from NBCUA, they could go up higher than what they've told us it would be. So it's possible. We're basing that based on the best knowledge we had at the time. As of today, the number of 5.7 million is the number that we think is what it's going to cost.
I know, was there any discussion when that number was set at, say, 5 million? I mean, was there any discussion to say that it should be capped at 5 million, and then any overages that are getting incurred as the months go by should not be passed along to the sewer users?
No, that's not how capital projects work within a sewer utility. You can't cap a project. You have to authorize the amount to spend to complete the project.
So we should anticipate that it's going to be higher than 5.7 million. Would that be correct, David?
There's 200,000 in contingencies. I hope we don't use more than 200,000 in contingencies. But I can't say because we're still very early in this application with the NJDEP.
And when do you expect that number will be finalized? Is it early next year, middle of next year?
Very early next year. I think we would be, closer to being finalized. Depends upon where we get to the ACO and when we go out to bid. I think, John, we're anticipating going out to bid for the project in April.
I'm assuming, yeah, provided that we have to have the funding in place. I think Mr. Gregory, I think one of the reasons why the number came up is that I believe at the time when we originally did the number, we were not aware that we had requested that the trust allow us to fund the connection fee, and then they allowed us to do it, and that's what kind of jumped the number up significantly. So that way it didn't have to be paid up front. It could be paid out over 30 years. So on an annualized basis, it lowered the fees to the individual users. But we assume that if all goes in order, and I guess, Kevin, you can answer this better than we're hoping to be out in March or April with the bid. We have a hard number then. The way the trust works is they do interim financing. And then when the project is completed, you do your final, they do a final loan sale. You along with 25 or 30 other projects or whatever the state has completed at that time. They have, just so everyone's aware, the trust does have a AAA bond rating. So you get the best rate available in the market at the time. And half of it is at zero because that's federally funded money that you're putting back into the system. So you're paying half of what the rate is. So it's
that doesn't instill much confidence because we still have many months where this could be revalued at cost. There wouldn't be when would it be reported back to the sewer users that there's increases coming for the loan amount?
I mean, once we get the bid amount, once the project is bid and we have the dollar amount, at that point, that's a public, I mean, the bid opening is a public opening. So the lowest responsible bidder gets the project. So at that point, you'll have a really good handle on where you believe the number is. The estimate was done by the engineers. I have confidence that that number is within the range.
So we don't know. We do not expect any major changes in that number. It will of course depend on other variables. When the project is let for bid, you'll know it before it's awarded because we'll have the benefit of the bid.
Would you frame a 5 million to 7 million, 5 million to 5.7 million change, a significant change or not a significant change? So
well, I think Mr. Napolitano just said to you the reason why it jumped is because previously $800,000 was not in that number. It was somewhere else. And it was put into the NJI Bank financing package. And that's the reason for the change.
Okay.
Next.
Yeah, I'll pass. So the details of the 5 points now 5.7 million, as to what is included in there. How do we obtain the details of what's in that budget? There's been open request filed for that information, and the open request has not been satisfied. So that information's never been passed along to the residents.
It's a matter of public record. I'm sure we can get you a copy of it.
Yeah, I think that's that open request is in process.
The open request is in process.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Kathy?
All right, next.
Okay, Benjamin Wagman.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
You have to give your address.
Hi, Benjamin Wagman, 10 Mountain Lakes Road, Oakland, New Jersey. I'm just going to make a comment here, and then I'm just going to follow it up with one quick question. I know some of our laptops are dying. I got a charger going. But in any event, this is for pretty much those that are on this Zoom call right now. I don't know if this has been established. Maybe it's been alluded to, but I want everybody to understand something. That none of the council members nor the mayor are on sewers. None of them, okay? But yet they control the purse. I'm making a comment here, okay? I'm allowed to do that.
Yes.
And none of them are on sewers. So what you're hearing tonight, and what I'm hearing tonight, is unanswered questions, discrepancies, lack of transparency, and frustration. And that's, I guess, to be expected when you don't really have the kind of representation you deserve. I know I might have alluded to this in a previous meeting, but it really does ring that revolutionary war bell of taxation without representation. So you have 235 sewer users, of which about 110, 120 attended tonight, asking some questions, some very important questions, some of which were not answered, some of which were deflected. But the fact of the matter is that we don't have anybody to speak on our behalf. And right now, the 5.7 million, which could turn into 6.7 million or 10.7 million if you find a electric line or a big rock underneath the ground that you have to divert, that could easily come down to us because now the costs have gone up. It's like putting in a driveway or an addition on a house. You really don't know. And yes, I understand that there was budgeted some additional dollars, but the fact of the matter is we really don't know. But the disconcerting part is that it seems as if the mayor or the council, nor the council, is really giving us a voice. There was an opportunity back on September 30th to give us a voice, a committee, a council, an advisory committee, and that went poo-poo. And now we're 2 months later and we're still where we are. So I just wanted to make that clear to anybody that's on this Zoom right now that we're not being represented. So those that are asking questions on all of our behalf, all of our 235. But my question is this, and I know the mayor and council have said this repeatedly in this call, that there is threatening of litigation. My question is, have you actually been served with any litigation?
I have not been personally served, but I would not be served. It would be our attorney.
Okay, so has anybody, the attorney, the council?
I really, I know what you're asking. And again, it's really off topic from the hearing.
Well, no, you did mention litigation, Mr. Kuhn. So I figured if that was a way not to answer questions, as a resident, you mentioned litigation. I want to know, is there litigation? Therefore, have you been served? Or is it rumors?
It's not a rumor. I'm not going to call it a threat, but I was told by different sewer service area residents that they're going to get a group and sue us.
Okay.
Now that is another word for litigation.
Okay. So I imagine, Mr. Kuntz, you're going to agree with the mayor on that. I imagine you're going to agree with the mayor on that. But what I find, again, disconcerting is that based on the mere threat, rumor, whatever you want to call it, to use that as a shield to avoid answering legitimate concerned questions by residents, to me, adds to the fuel of this issue that we're having right now. Now, if you want to say anything else to that, that's fine, but that's how I feel, and I think that's how others feel as well.
Okay.
John Napolitano, do you want to speak? You're our attorney.
Yeah, I mean, I understand, I think I understand your frustration. Generally, we do our best, I think, to avoid litigation whenever possible. And as far as I know, no one has been served with any papers. I did have one conversation with an attorney who contacted me and asked me if I would represent the homeowners against the town. Who on how he was contacted initially, I don't know. I did advise him that I could not do that, given that, I am the sewer lawyer, for lack of a better word. So I think it's more than rumor. I mean, there were outreaches failing. So at that point, as lawyers, we give advice that's a little different maybe than we would if it was less contentious, I guess.
Mayor, I can tell you that a friend of mine did get a letter soliciting money from them for a lawsuit against the borough.
Let me ask you a question. Again, this is based on a letter, a rumor. Has anyone actually considered looking at anything that's been happening at this point regarding litigation? Because I haven't heard anything about litigation, but what I have heard was over the last good month, that seems to be the screen that the council and mayor are hiding behind. And if it's been a month, I would think by now something substantial would have been concluded, but that doesn't seem the case.
Next.
Listen, I'm not asking for an answer, but I'm just telling you that it's very disconcerting and almost like dangerous when a government body really suppresses the public's voice. That history has not shown in favor of that. And while this is not a worldwide issue or a countrywide issue, this is representative of some big issues when a government, suppresses a people, a minority, against a much bigger issue. And that's exactly how I perceive it. And that's wrong. I mean, you guys should be better than that. You offered up an opportunity. Right. You offered up an opportunity to give us a voice 2 months ago. That's never come to fruition. I don't think that will ever come to fruition. And yet here we are, a 3-hour meeting of pissed off residents not knowing what their bill is going to look like, never mind a year from now. But we're talking down the road. We're talking down the road. Right now, you created a very rosy PowerPoint. Your bill is going to go up $20. You know what? I know enough about what's going on to really say to myself, there's too much out there to say that it's only going to be $20. There's too many things, too many discrepancies to say it's only going to be $20. And that's the transparency, that's the honesty that we're all trying to find with you guys, our representatives. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. Kathy?
Yes. Let's see. Katrine Beck?
She already spoke. Go to somebody else. She'll be at the end.
Okay, then there's Paul Chatterton. And by the way, the clerk lost connection. She lost internet.
Well, I'm losing my laptop. I'm down to about 20%. So we have to end this soon because I'm running out of power.
I think there are power cords for that.
Yeah, but I have to go and hook it up and I can move. So who's next, Kathy?
Yes, Paul. That's Paul Chatterton.
We're going to have to limit it to 3 minutes now.
Okay.
This is Paul Chatterton, 187 Lakeside. Regarding this litigation talk, there's no litigation. If I have a personal lawyer that's representing me, who I call and ask, hey, is this right? That's not litigation. That's me covering my ass because I want to make sure that everything's right. That has nothing to do with litigation. So you guys,
that's not the topic for tonight. So
yeah, but you guys keep bringing it up and not answering questions because you're saying litigation. There is no litigation.
All right. Do you have a question about tonight?
Yeah. The road construction details by the police. I'm assuming that there's going to be police blocking the roads and whatnot. Correct. What type of formula is used for that? Is that the general $75 an hour rate that a normal contractor would pay? Or are we privy to the cost plus of the borough, considering we already pay the salaries of the police and for the vehicles and everything? Or how does that work?
That is to be determined.
Well, no, I'll tell you the way it normally works for construction projects. When there is a traffic control needed, there is usually an allowance built into the contract for that, and it is usually police on quasi duty or off duty, traffic control details, and they are paid at that rate, which is their going rate of time and a half. That's how the compensation works for that. When you
all right, but being that my taxes are already paying that salary, is there any forgiveness or negotiation as to what we would be paying the borough? I understand the officer has to get whatever's in his contract, but are we able to? Are we going to be paying the same rate that Rockland would pay to have a police officer on a detail? Or are we getting a discounted rate considering we're already paying their salary and we paid for the cars, we're paying for the fuel?
Right. So the main cost there, of course, is to the officer. If they are, on an off-duty traffic detail, it is time and a half, and that is what they earn, regardless of who the contractor is or who the contractor is working for. Okay.
So there's no time and a half plus toward that the borough gets a separate $10 an hour?
There's an administrative fee that, let's say PSE&G has to pay that we're not going to, charge ourselves.
Okay, so then it is just the cost of the salary and then the administrative extras that other construction companies would pay will be forgiven. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, that's usually not billed out that way.
Okay, and my one other question. So the ACO had the timeline of. Was it going out to bid in January, and that's all moved now because of the level 2 environmental?
It's dependent upon receiving approval for the EIT or NJI Bank to provide the financing. So they are an entity that does control the schedule right now.
Okay, so does that put us in any bad standing with the ACO that we're not meeting the timelines, or is that?
I defer to John on that.
I've called and written a letter to the department asking for a time extension. Once we know the delay as caused by the bank, at that point, the state normally will issue, and I can't say always, but normally issues you an extension of time corresponding to.
We don't want the 420 to turn back to the original 800, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that wouldn't be it. I mean, what you would look at is it would be a delay that would be a daily charge. But like I said, typically in my experience, those are liberally granted because clearly the delay here is not within our control, right? It's actually within the state's control.
Right.
So under the rules, under the terms of the agreement, they should be issuing us a time extension.
My final question, I'm looking at the financial overview from the September meeting. The ongoing operating expense, right now you got 25,000 for 19 and 2020. And it looks like it doubles by year 2024 to up to 49,000. Is that just a really fluffed up number, or are we expecting our operating expenses to double? I understand the block budget line of sewer operating is going to drop out, get replaced with the debt service or whatever else. But are we expecting our ongoing operating expense to really double, even with the new infrastructure in place?
That's why it's stated earlier that I'm very conservative with those projections. We do include in all those the 2.5% annual increase. We also look down the road and think the first couple of years there won't be much in the way of replacement of any parts or things in the system, but there may increase as you go down the road a little bit.
Yeah,
so
I'm
just a conservative means of not wanting to understate the potential costs, as we're trying to make people feel comfortable with what we think the scenario.
I'm just picturing the budget getting doubled, and that's very conservative. Plus, we're dumping millions into the infrastructure, and the relining of the pipes. So those should be in good shape for a number of years. So that is a very
they should be, but we won't. We also got two very wide quotes in terms of what it might cost us to have the ongoing operator for what's left of the utility. So that's also factored in there.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're going to do one last question.
Okay, Katrine Beck.
As long as it's not a repeated question.
It's not, Mayor. 8 Chapel Hill. Can we get clarity as to how many sewer users there are? I've heard 235. I've seen 258 in the Boswell reports. I've seen 262. I know they're repeated accounts, but what is the actual number of users? Because everyone counts.
David?
235.
And that includes the Copper Tree and business entities as well?
That's correct.
Okay. Mr. Napolitano, is there a proposed sewer ordinance or an amendment that you have been tasked to draft at this point in order to accommodate this project?
Not at this point. I will tell you that the ordinance, I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for, but as far as the normal ordinance would go is you'd be required to meet all the rules and regulations of Northwest Bergen. As far as what you can discharge or not discharge. You have a sewer ordinance in place, I believe already, that talks about rate structure. So we'll, once the project is ongoing and up and running, we'll put together, an omnibus one, which will adopt the rules and regs of Northwest Bergen. That is, I believe, online. You can look at it's relatively fat.
Okay.
It'll say what you can discharge, not discharge, limits, that kind of stuff.
Okay, because the one we have now looks to be only 3 paragraphs and it's only a user rate. Doesn't say anything about repairs, hookup fees, or anything like that. So are you saying you would adopt whatever the NBC ways?
And that would be on the regular general rules and regulations. As far as connection fees go, the way that's calculated generally is in accordance with either the MUA or the Sewage Authority statutes, even for self-liquidating authorities, how new ones. As far as new connections go, I don't think you would see, the town would have to make a determination if they were going to allow new hookups, not not the original 235, as to whether or not they would do with a property assessment or a connection fee. And that's something that's not determined at this point. And you'd have to, if you were going to do an assessment, you would adopt an ordinance at that time, detailing how the assessment would be done, over how many years, what the price would be, that kind of stuff.
Right. When you say assessment, because I'm sure people are getting concerned, you're talking about assessment for people outside of this group who would be
Right, absolutely. If we put a sewer line down another street and people are going to hook into it, it would be how to pass that capital cost of that line on to the residents who are hooking into it.
Okay. And then my last question for the evening was, I just wanted to get back to Mr. Boswell when he asked me about, it was the negative public response. So in your September 2020 report, Roman numeral 4, in there it says the public will directly benefit from the various infrastructure improvements. The borough does not anticipate any negative public response during the above referenced public comment period. I'm wondering if you're going to amend that and let the state know that there was what appears to be negative public response as to this presentation.
Ms. Beck, while you were between the last time you spoke and now, I looked it up, saw it, and we are removing that comment. Are we saying that there is significant public comment? We would remove the comment rather than say there's significant public response, because frankly, it could jeopardize the environmental findings of the report, and it's not pertinent to the level 2 environmental review.
So you're going to amend it to let the state know that there was no negative public comment?
We're going to remove the statement that there was no negative public comment.
If I can answer this, Ms. Beck, they have to give minutes of this and a summary of the comments. So the state will get a summarization of this. So, and that will be part of the public record. So, since that report is done prior to, and this will be, so the state will get a record of this hearing. So,
like a link to this YouTube, you mean a record? I mean, I don't think
well, there's two different ways. I mean, it's supposed to be a detailed set of minutes. Since this would also be kept, if the state wanted to see it, they could request a copy of it. Generally, depending on the detail of the minutes, there's they may or may not feel necessary that it's needed.
Thank you. I just have one comment. I apologize to who asked me about the waste management plan and who paid it, so I can get back to you on that.
That was Chris Giordano, I believe.
There was a few.
Was it Mr. DeMora that I said I would get back to him?
It was Mr. Giordano.
That was Chris Giordano, Mayor.
Giordano, hi, Joseph. Giordano, thank you. If there are any more questions that were not answered, email us and we will try and get you a response. I thank you all for coming to the Zoom virtual meeting, and that is it. Anybody else? Final on the council? Anybody?
Mayor, we do just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion
to adjourn.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night.
Good night, Joseph.
Good night. Take care.
Good dreams.